Hey friends and family, welcome. I wanted to shoot a quick video today about how we found our farm, kind of the process we went through. I know a lot of people are looking for farms. I know the market's really crazy right now. Kind of just want to give my opinion on the market. Seems like a lot of the live streams this week I was on, real estate came up on quite a few, and I think people were looking at relocating and kind of just how we went about finding our farm and what I would maybe do a little different. And with that, let's get into it. So for starters, we spent years looking for our farm. We looked in multiple states. We looked in Kentucky, we looked in Missouri. We loved lots of things about both states. And honestly, the main reason we looked out of state was just due to budget. I know a lot of people look at strategic relocation and just weigh pros and cons of maybe a market they're looking at. And I mean, honestly, for us, it was just, we had an idea of what we wanted, and we knew in Indiana we couldn't afford that. So we looked in other states, and there were a lot more options. So we spent spring break and fall break 3 years in a row basically looking at farms. We spent a week in Missouri twice. We spent 2 or 3 trips to Kentucky. And we looked at no farms in Indiana until we purchased the farm in southern Indiana. And I think one thing I can say about that is we had never even looked at ground in southern Indiana, and again, a lot of it was just price driven. So I guess if you're not willing to relocate, you're obviously going to have very limited options, and maybe you might not have any option in your budget. So it's something that's hard. Our farm is currently 3 hours from where we live now, which is obviously much closer than any place else we looked, but it can still be a struggle at times. And another thing a lot of people talk about and think about is whether they want to buy their farm and do what we're doing, start getting it ready, but not live at it. And there's definitely pros and cons to that too. The big pro for us is we bought before COVID, so we bought before the prices drastically went up. But just like the farm we bought, I have that saved on my favorites for over a year, and they actually reduced it significantly right before we were going to look at an out-of-state property. My wife did not even make the trip to look at the farm we bought because she had looked at so many farms that she just honestly didn't even really probably believe that it would work out or that it was going to be the one. So she didn't actually even see it till after we closed. And it really came together. And I know there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time looking, and I mean, we've spent probably close to 3 years. So I guess as a word of encouragement, I know you may seem like you're never finding what you want, or you're never going to find what you want, but make your list of what you're looking for. We wanted tillable, we wanted woods, we wanted a pond, which we don't have. We do have multiple creeks on our property, but you might not find everything you want. We hope to put a pond in at some point. I've talked to a couple excavators, so that's something we're looking at. But that's, make your list and look for properties. And I would say don't be willing to go look at other properties maybe a little out of your comfort area, just to give you an idea if it's worth it and if it's what you really want. So we found our farm just the conventional way. We watched Zillow, and every time something would come, we would try to check it out. When we went out of state, we did work with a couple of realtors, but I still would have properties I'd find on Zillow, and I would send them to the realtors, and then we would, ask them if they had other properties we could look at while we were there. it was a painstaking process though. I mean, we spent, you know, days driving, and I mean, you would get to a property and it would be nothing like what it looked like online. I know some people will buy sight unseen. After what we went through, I would definitely never do that. We saw properties online that looked like they were nice properties, and we would get there and it was just, I mean, the pictures had to be really, really old. So I know that's hard when you want to look at multiple properties far away, but I think it's worth the investment to get, you know, boots on the ground and inspect those properties in person. We've bought and sold multiple properties, and the biggest thing I can say is it's a very emotional process, but do your best to keep the emotions out of it. That's how you will come out ahead. It's hard to do. It's very hard to do. In fact, I was just talking to somebody this week and I said, so we bought our 100-acre farm, and then in the last year we were able to purchase the farm next to it, which I did a video a while back about. But that was one of the first properties that it had an emotional like tie to it, because with that being next to us, if we didn't get it bought, it would really change things. So with that, I think that's just a key to, I mean, think of it as an investment. It's hard to do, but in the long run, you'll come out ahead. We had flipped a few houses, which is kind of how we got the money to put down on the first property we bought, and then got it paid off. You will find, if you're financing raw land, it can be a little different. The banks we worked with a local bank on this last purchase, but they required different deposits. We put more money down, and the length of the loans are different and stuff like that. So you'll definitely want, especially if you're looking at raw land, you want to make sure you explore your options and know what you're getting into. One thing about working with local banks, on the last purchase that we just made recently, the Fed was actually getting ready to meet and raise rates, and I was really pushing the bank to get our paperwork done. And when I talked to them, because they were a smaller bank and we had our actual application filled out and everything, we just didn't have the contract finalized. We were able to go ahead and lock in the rate, because I knew the Fed was meeting and we were going to have another increase, and they actually have met multiple times. We've had multiple increases since we got that locked in and bought that property. But that's something, maybe all banks do it. I'm not familiar. This was the first loan we had gotten in a while, but that's something you'll definitely want to look at and think about as far as if you are financing, what your options are and what you can do. One of the last things, which I think is probably the most important thing, but we were only moving 3 hours away, so obviously we're still gonna, you know, we're not that far away from family and friends, but community's a big deal. I think it's becoming more and more important to have people close that you can count on, and it's something that was very out of my comfort zone. The biggest thing I can say about that is if you don't put yourself out there, if you don't go talk to people, then you're never going to build that community. I know more people at our farm, around our farm in southern Indiana, than I've ever known when it comes to neighbors. I've never been one to go search out my neighbors and really develop a relationship with them. Not by any fault, but I just never saw that need. And when knowing we're going to move, I really wanted to have local people that, you know, I felt like I could count on. And I think getting out of your comfort zone, if that's not something you're good at, and just going out and meeting people. Every time we drive by somebody that's on the side of the road, you know, I would stop, introduce myself, tell them who I was, tell them where I lived. And we've met tons of our neighbors. I know more people in southern Indiana than I probably have ever known anywhere where we've lived. And of course you're not going to hit it off with everybody, but if you don't put yourself out there and go put in the work to develop relationships, they're not just going to come knock on your door. And that's the majority of kind of my thoughts. The market, that's something everybody talks about. What's it going to do? If you look at historic interest rates, they're really not that far out of line. We had, depending on your age, you just saw a long stretch of extremely low interest rates, which does not make a lot of sense if you really think about it. But if you talk to kind of the older generation, I mean, they saw interest rates in the 10 to 14%. So what we're looking at now, maybe it changes, maybe it doesn't. Maybe this is evening itself back out. So that could change if you're borrowing a lot of money. That could obviously change what you're looking at. The other thing it's done is change the market. One thing I haven't seen is rural property losing a lot of value. I know we hear about the housing market. I was fortunate in the housing market. I bought multiple houses when, in 08 and 09 when the market was, turned out to be rock bottom, which was a great time to buy. And I know we look at the economy and many people think, we could see that again, and we very well could, but I think the key is nobody really knows. And if you're waiting for that, you might be waiting forever. And probably the last thing I'll touch on is just how much land you need. And the one thing I might do different, maybe if we found something closer to where we could move immediately, I would look at that at a lot smaller track. But I honestly don't think we really had that option. And even if we would have kept looking, I don't know that ever would have presented itself. So you can wait for the perfect property, but you may never find it. So sometimes you just have to check off as many boxes as you can and just move forward with that property. Looking back at it, we bought the farm at the perfect time. We bought it weeks before the dramatic increase of real estate due to COVID. Now, if you've watched any of our videos, we just purchased 50 more acres months ago, and it was a very, very, very hard to do. The prices have increased drastically, but my wife made a point and said, if we don't buy this now, we probably will never have the opportunity in our lifetime to buy it again, which is very true. And we were able to do it, so we did it. It also, I think I talked, Tag from Life Done Free talked about this. It was one of the only things he talked about that would make sense to go into debt for was land. And the way we looked at it, it will open up a lot of opportunities. We have some family and friends. We have friends that may want to relocate to our area. At some point, maybe we can divide off. Now we have 150 acres, but we have a lot more road frontage. So now if we wanted to divide some land off, we could. It gave us that option. But the big thing is just the fact that it was right next door, and controlling your neighbors is just so important. So with that, I'll kind of wrap this up. I appreciate you guys watching. If you like the video, like and subscribe. We'll have some more videos hopefully coming out soon. We're getting ready to work on the electrical and the pole barn, and we're going to end up putting a 200 amp service in just due to availability, and it'll be able to be upgraded to a 400 down the road if we need to. And still have to finish the shiplap and the tiny house, and that'll probably be the next few videos, getting that service in. I've got most of the trees down, and that will be the next big thing, is to get that service in before spring and get to work down there. I appreciate you guys watching. Thanks everybody.